Hello and what's up everybody, welcome back to Screen Technicals. In the previous video we have just fetched the data from our Supabase client, right? And we have displayed the data just as like this, right? Now in this video we are going to create the post view page, you can say the post page, the actual post page. If I click on this, it should go to a UI. It should just open a URL where I can just read the post, right? So let's do that. So I will open this, and inside the pages I'm going to create a new folder, naming it as posts, right? Hit enter, and inside this I'm going to create a new file just like this, and I'm going to write here slug just like this inside the square brackets, right? .js. Hit enter, and I'm going to change this JavaScript to React so that I can just write React at this point. Now I'm going to write here RAFCE. Hit enter. Now just remove this right here, slug. Save this thing. Right now at this point, if I write here slash posts slash writing let's say something like demo, let's say, and hit enter, and you can find the slug at this one. You can find the slug page finally at this point, right? Now let's first create the front end part, and then we are going to see the how can we just get how can we just see the data on which we click, right? So what I need is, let's say at this point I want to display the title. So first let's say I'm giving the div a class of, let's say w-full and h, let's say min-h-screen, just like this. And then after that I want an h1 tag, and it's going to have the basically the title. So let's say the title is next.js course, just like this. Save this thing, and I want I'm just going to give it a class of text dash, let's say 3xl, just like this. Let's say font dash 700, just like this. And then I want let's say I want some padding, so I can just give the padding to my this div, to the main div. So right here p-5, just like this. And I want in MD I want px of 20, let's say, and I want py of 10, let's say, in MD. Save this thing, just like this. Looks great, right? Now I can just increase the font size. Let's say I'm making it as 4xl. Now it looks nice, right? And then after this I'm going to have my content part. So let's say I'm creating a p tag, and inside this I'm going to have my the what is that is the the content part. So instead of p tag, let's create a new div at this point, right? And let's say I'm writing here lorem 200. Hit enter. Save this thing, and let's say I need some gap, so I can just give some classes to this. So class of, let's say, empty-5. Looks great, right? Now so it is a simple design, let's say. So I want the data, right? So let's get the data. Now there are two ways we can do that. Let's say three ways. The first way is using the server side props, and the second thing is SSG, that is static side generation, right? So let's first get it using the server side props, then we are going to see what is static side generation. So at this point just open the index.js part and just copy this thing, paste it. So it is basically a async function, right? And let's remove all these things, only this much apart, and I want to get the particular post. So let's press Ctrl Z, right? Ctrl Z. So there is Command Z, sorry. And let's say I just want to get the query that is at this point. So I can write here const slug is equals to context dot query dot slug. So it's basically going to give me this URL, this part, this much, this is demo, right? If I just print log this, let's say at this point, sorry to tell about print, right? As I'm used to Python, so I just say as print list sort of thing, right? So let's write here slug, save this thing, press Command J, and if I refresh this page, let's say And so, okay, Supabase is not defined. Let's make it as defined. Hit enter, save this thing. Now let's see. Yeah, now you can find this demo at this point, right? This is the demo, right? So here I'm going to get the slug, right? Now in Supabase we have a functionality called .eq, using which we can just do a filtering type of thing, right? So here I can just pass the slug just like this, and I want to match this slug to be this slug, right? So this is the slug that is coming from this point, and it's going to return me that particular post of that slug. Now save this thing. Let's I can just make it as a post, because we are going to get a single post just like this. And for right now, if I just log this thing, it's going to give me an empty array, because there is there is no post available with this slug, right? So I can write here post, save this thing, refresh it, and you can see slash post, arrow slashing post return get server prop in undefined. You can see it is undefined, right? Now just go back and just open the car.jsx, and at this point I'm just going to pass the slug. So it's going to be posts, right? It is posts. So I can write here slash posts just like this. Let's say slash, I can use the dollar and this thing, so that I can it is the type of f string if you are coming from Python. So you can just write here the variable name, that is in case I want the slug. So I have to pass the slug from from the index.js. So at this point I'm going to pass the slug. Slug is equals to, it's going to be post.slug. Save this thing. Now coming to this point, I'm just going to fetch that slug just like this, and then I'm going to pass the slug at this point. Save this thing, right? And let's say making this 170 to 200. Save this thing. Looks great to me. And I can even add to this. Let's say I'm going to add a pb of 5. It look like this, or make it as 3. Looks great right now. Now if I click on this, and you can see this thing, you can see the slug at this point, and you can see the post, right? Now we have to just replace this with our this will be replaced with the content part, and this will be replaced with the title part, right? Now let's say I'm opening the slug.js, and here I'm going to pass my slug, not slug, the post, and then I can write here at this point, that is post. Now it is an empty array. As you can see at this point, I'm getting it is not an empty array, it is actually an array which is giving me this this data. So I can just write here just like this. So I can just fetch, I'm just doing the indexing part, right? So post, the first element of the post, I'm just getting the first element of the post, and I want to display the title of this just like this. Save this thing, and you can find the the title. You can see the title at this point even, and I can just remove this thing, and at this point I can pass my post, the first element of the post dot content just like this. Save the thing, and I'm getting the content at this point, right? Now this is we are getting using get server side props. But let's open nextjs at this point, nextjs, and I'm writing here ssg, that is server side generation. Let's open this, and let's click on this data fetching, click on this static paths. So there is two things, one is the get static paths, and another is get static props. So what is the use of the get static paths and the static props? Now obviously the static props is for to passing the props to our to our this to this part of JSX, and the use of the static path is to just actually it just tells the Next.js tells the server to create a HTML file of it. So let's say if I'm writing here, let's say it is get static side props, not side prop, it is get static props, I hope so. And another thing is the static paths. So let's copy this thing from here, command C, I'm going to paste this thing at this point, right? So actually it is going to generate some static files, right? That is the .html files, which will be which will be pretty much more faster to load than this this server side props. So let me tell you the difference between get static props and the get static server, get the server side props, right? Now the server side props basically generates the HTML file when the user do the request at the build time, right? So it's actually it actually, let's say I'm just clicking on this on this link. So what the server side props will do, it will generate the HTML file when I will click on this. So each time it will just going to generate that. So for that reason it takes some time. But if I'm using the get static props, then it will be already generated in my in my server, and whenever I just click on this, it will just show me this thing, and there will be it will be much faster. So let's say, okay, now at this point you can see this is an array, right? The path is actually an array, and it has some one is this params, and it has an, let's say it is an object. So it has it has two objects. Now it will be, so what the nextjs will do is it will just generate two static paths for these two IDs, right? So let's say I have 5 posts, let's say in my server, then it will generate 5 HTML 5 HTML pages that will be served, right? So we're going to do that using the JavaScript part, not manually, just like this. Give the comma, and at this point, so at this point I'm going to get all the posts. So let's copy this much of thing and paste it at this point. Let's remove this comma 1 and then give this thing, and it will be posts, just like this. And then I'm going to do the map method, right? So actually I'm going to write here const path. I'm going to define this path, right? It's going to be it's going to be a map method. So I'm going to write here posts dot map, and it's going to be it will be mapping a particular post, just like this, and it will be an arrow function, just like this, and it's going to return me the params, just like this, right? And here I'm going to pass the slug. So slug will be it will be equals to the post dot slug. Let me tell you what is actually I'm doing at this point is, now what is the error that we are getting. Now the error is pretty much simple, right? We have to just remove this thing, there's this thing and this thing, and instead of this we have to keep the curly brackets. Now the reason is because you have to just we have to just pass the objects, right, in the form of objects. Save this much of thing, right? And now at this point it's going to be context dot params dot slug, and this part will be same, and save this much of thing. Let's go to this point, let's refresh it, and it's telling get static path was added without a static props. So get static props context. Let's restart the server. I will first refresh this, and then I'm right here yarn dev, hit enter, and let's see, let's refresh it, and it's going to give the error again, /post/slug, and let's go back first, let's say refresh it. Okay, now let's click on this. Now it's telling us this error, get static path was added without a get static props in the /post/slug. This without static props, get static path does nothing. So we have defined the get static paths at this point, and this is the path, this is the props. Oh, we have just mistaken the spelling at this point, so it will be static. Save this thing. Now it should work. Now let's see. Yeah, now this is working perfectly, right? And I will just remove the console log. There is this one from here, and this one even. Save this thing, and let's see. Now refresh it, and let's see. Yeah, now it's working. If I click on this, it will submit this post. If I click on this, so it's going to take time, and it's going to show this. Now it's taking actually some time, right? So let's say I'm going to just copy this thing, I'll just go to the index.js, and at this point I'm going to replace this with the get static props. Now this will generate an HTML file which will be loaded much more fast, right? So that's why static, the get static props is much more faster than the server side props. But there is one more thing, that is ISR. I will tell you what is ISR and where do we need ISR, right? Now so we have done this much of thing, and I have just I don't have to just pass the context at this point. I don't think so we need it. Save this thing. Now click on this and reload this page, and you can see if I click on this, it's going to serve me, or click on this, it's going to serve me this thing. So this is working. So one more thing I'm going to add at this point, that is the top loading bar, because whenever we are just just changing our route from one point to another, the user doesn't know that whether something is happening in the background, because there is nothing type of loading at this point. So let's search for react -top dash loading bar. So it's basically a package which helps us to create that if you have just seen YouTube, then whenever you click on any video or anything, any button, so it will just a red line will become at the top, and that is, it shows that it's loading, right? So let's just copy this thing, that is yarn at this thing, right? Control C, paste this thing, hit enter, and it should install that thing, right? It has been installed. Right here, clear, and let's run the server again, and I will just go to my the underscore app.js, and at this point I'm going to initialize that thing. So if you'll see at this point, just go down and you are going to find this thing. Just copy this thing, command C, paste it at this point, just like this. Save this much everything, and let's say we have this thing, so this const progress. So just first copy this thing, and just we're going to paste that at this point where this is and we have to import the usestate sort of thing, just like this, and then just copy this thing, command C, and let's paste it at the top of this thing there. At this point, save this thing, and let's say we can just change this color to, for right now, let's say I want it to be white, just like this. Save this thing, and on loader finished, I can just make it as progress to 100, let's say, and let's see, just refresh it. If I click on this, nothing happens. So we have to do one more thing, that is, it will be it will work only on click functions, right? So what we're going to do is, at this point we can use the use router sort of thing. So right here, import use router from next, okay, don't allow, just right here, next slash it is router, just like this, and I'm going to create an instance of this. So right here, const router, and it's going to be use router, just like this, right? Save this much of thing. Now after this, what I'm going to do is, I'm going right here, router dot is going to be router dot, it is basically an event. So I can write here router dot events, right, events dot on. So whenever an event occurs, I want the first event to be on change the route, the router change start. So right here, router change start, I want to set the progress. So I can just, it will be a callback function. So I can just write like this, I can write here set progress to, let's say 50, and just give an this type of arrow thing, sort of thing, right? And then I can just go and copy this thing. I can just change this to route change complete, right? And I can just make it as 100, just like this. And let's see now it's working or not. If I click on this and you can see this thing, now it is working. Okay, and it is giving us an error. Can't read the properties of undefined, reading on. So it is actually defined. Just refresh the page and reading on, right? So let's say I'm just making it as 0 again. Let's say refresh it, and it is giving us the error. It is saying that router.events.on. So it should work actually. Let's say command J, control C, clear, and let's say yarn dev again, and let's say refresh this page, and it's going to give that error again. So one thing we can do is we can just give it a waiting time to this waiting time, and let's say it will be in milliseconds. So let's say 300, and let's say if I refresh the page again, okay, it is telling me router dot this thing, and router is already defined. Router is this thing, use router from next/router. So if I just comment this thing, so it is going to work. If I comment this thing again, now it is working. I refresh the page and type error, cannot read the properties of undefined, reading.on. So actually it is taking some time to load. So we can do one more thing. We can use the use effect hook. So right here, use effect, and just like this, and I can just place this thing, command X, paste this, just like this. Now hopefully this should work. Now yeah, now this is working. If I click on this thing, this is coming. Click on this thing, click on this thing, and this is coming, right? So this is working fine, right? Now we have finally done, our static site, that is path, and that is the SSG. Now let me explain you once more what we have done. Now in the previous video we have seen about the server side props. Now the server side props actually build an HTML file during the build time. But if you are using static site path, Next.js will, we have to just tell Next.js that just build some HTML file for us, and whenever it is called, just throw them out, to the user, right? So you can see at this point in the Slack page, we have defined the static site path. So this is basically we are telling Next.js that you have to create these paths, right? So finally we have completed this thing, and in the next video we are going to make it as ISR. So I will be telling you that in the next video. So stay tuned to the channel, guys, and thanks for watching this video, guys, and I will see you next time.